Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, and you can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. And my books are also on audio as well. And you can find those on Amazon too. Now I've got three brand new guests. I have Steve DeVore on, Travis Nicholson, and Terri Parker. They want to discuss the Jamey DiDomenico case. Now, this turmoil began in January 2021 when Jamey DiDomenico, a loving father and devoted husband, discovered incriminating text messages on an iPad their 4-year-old was using. The messages from an unknown man suggested an affair between his wife and one of her clients. Troubled, Jamey photographed the messages and confronted his wife, who denied the allegations and then asked for a divorce. Days before their divorce depositions, she then accused Jamey of the silver bullet tactic, the SA. The accusation triggered a devastating chain of events. His wife obtained an order of protection, citing unfounded fears, which led to Jamey being evicted from his home with just 30 minutes to gather his belongings. Jamey and his son from a previous relationship were barred from returning, and he lost custody of his daughter as well. The court ordered him to sell his home, using proceeds to pay overwhelming child support and alimony, forcing him to move in with his parents. For over 2.5 years, he was allowed only limited supervised visitation with his daughter. In November of 2023, Jamey stood for trial for false charges, despite 125 letters attesting to his honesty and character and the presence of over 150 supporters in court. The trial, held in the same courthouse where his ex-wife practiced law, resulted in a wrongful conviction. No evidence of violence or RAPE was presented, only conflicting accounts. But the judge sentenced Jamey to 10 years in prison without parole. Now incarcerated, Jamey has lost everything: his freedom, his home, and custody of his daughter. Friends, family, and supporters are rallying to expose this miscarriage of justice and fight for his exoneration. And there is an appeal of the conviction that has been filed. There is also one other thing in question, is that allegedly his ex-wife committed fraud to receive large sums of money by impersonating a government official. This whole situation had been swept under the rug before it could ever reach the courts. I welcome you, Steve DeVore, Travis Nicholson, and Terri Parker. Where are you all at with this now?
Currently, well, first of all, first and foremost, thank you, Marianne, for having the three of us on. We want to personally thank you from Jamey as well. We saw him yesterday at Riverbend Maximum Security Prison here in Nashville. Where we are at now, unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, we lost the direct appeal to the state. Quite shockingly, honestly, in the brief from the state that they had sent back to his lawyer, Ben Rabin, who's a highly touted attorney here locally in Nashville, there were no case studies to back up their reasoning for denying the appeal. So where we're at now currently, and we can get into that later on what that was in regards to, but where we're at currently, we are appealing his case to the Supreme Court, the Tennessee Supreme Court. We all know that it's a long shot, that they take a very small percentage of cases, but we do hold a lot of hope and faith that the fact that nobody can tell us why or prove to us why some of the points in his appeal could not stand up. It's a little concerning, but then again, all of us who've been involved in this process along the way have seen a lot of red flags and seen a lot of quote unquote corruption. So that's kind of where we're at presently. After that, if that fails, we will go into the post-conviction stage of everything. And then it's starting all over.
Mm.
trying to find a new attorney, trying to find money, trying to keep Jamey's hopes up,
This is
trying to hope
just,
that they grant us a new trial.
yes, I mean, this is just terrible. And this is a pattern with a silver bullet tactic of these false allegations. People do this to each other all the time during divorce. I don't know why this has to happen. If they could just tell the truth, would be nice.
Well, I think the
Very,
reason that a lot of that happens is people use the law against their spouses by making false accusations, and that's
Hmm.
what we believe happened in Jamey's case. You know, she was able. The result of that was not only to get sole custody of her daughter, but she got every dime that they got out of the marriage, all the proceeds of the sale of the home, every dime. Um, and she got everything out of the home that she wanted without him getting to have a say.
It was also,
So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
every motion she filed to obtain more money from him, to get proceeds from the sale of the house, to sell his tools, to get rid of all of his property. She filed, I don't know how many motions, you guys can tell me, but just motion after motion to obtain everything, including trying to garnish his wages while in prison. He gets paid 50 cents an hour. He got a job in prison. And she was never denied any motion she filed. They gave her everything she ever asked for.
I'm sure people are wondering, did you ever file for a change of venue?
Jamey actually asked his attorney at the trial to do that, to change the venue, because obviously there's a lot of crossover, her being a divorce attorney in Williamson County and having a office right down the street from the courthouse. She had a lot of crossover with these legal representatives in Williamson County, which is a small town just outside of Nashville. So everyone knows everybody. And his first attorney um, said, that's not a good idea. I don't want to piss off the judge, which is already a red flag to say, if this attorney who's familiar with this judge was that concerned with somebody not being partial, not being impartial. But yeah, he denied that. So unfortunately, that wasn't even really asked of the first judge, even though it's an obvious thing that should have happened.
yeah, that was one of the most frustrating things. Is that's to me that's 101. There's a conflict of interest. The judges know the accuser. Um, I wish we knew what we knew now then, because since then we've dug up tens of 20 to 30 different cases of corruption that his civil trial judge was involved with, as well as the criminal trial judge. Um, so there's just a lot of sweeping under the rug, as you stated, in Williamson County, and we are trying to bring it. We're just trying to bring people's awareness to it, as well as trying to help prove Jamey's innocence over it all.
I
Yeah, and
think
while we're on the subject of corruption in Williamson County, I mean, his first judge that handled the divorce, Judge Binkley, had recently retired kind of in disgrace because of allegations of him being involved in some nefarious, I don't know what all we should say here, but he had just won a re-election, an 8-year term, and he retired 1 year in. And he was allegedly involved in a prostitution scandal that resulted in him, retiring early. And
mhm.
his excuse was, "Oh, I just want to do something else. Just want to try enjoy my retirement." When he just won an 8-year term, so that was a very strange time to decide to retire. And we know what we know, so he got out of that situation. And the further you dig into Williamson County and this very nefarious conduct, there's a great podcast called "Once Upon a Time in Nashville" that explores the wider sort of sex trafficking sort of stuff that was happening in Davidson County that resulted in an arrest of another judge. And, we don't know how deep that stuff goes, but here's Judge Binkley, the divorce attorney. He retires, but is allowed to come out of retirement to service all the motions in Jamey's divorce trial. So here's a guy that's retired, but he comes back to the bench after his retirement because after the divorce trial, Judge Woodruff, who presided over the criminal trial, passed off the divorce trial proceedings, which was not resolved yet. So the divorce trial is still happening when the criminal trial happens. So all this criminal divorce trial stuff that happened with Judge Woodruff carries over into the criminal trial. All the information, they all knew all this stuff. So already an odd conflict of interest there. Well, Judge Woodruff said, well, this is too much. I don't want to handle the divorce trial and the criminal trial. So I'm going to pass it off to my pal, Judge Binkley, who's just retired. He's retiring now. So it's just odd to have a retired judge come back out of retirement and preside over the divorce motions and all the divorce proceedings, you know, just, and he gave her, like we said before, every motion she filed to obtain, you know, funds from the sale of the house and you name it. He just granted it all to her.
And on top of it, one of our team members went down to the Williamson County clerk to try to obtain the actual order or motion that was granted for Judge Binkley to still preside over Jamey's civil case during his retirement. And our team member was told by the courthouse they didn't have it on file. So it just, I mean, even to this current day, Woodruff is still trying to stick his nose in Jamey's case. You know, there was a motion filed for more alimony from the accuser while Jamey was in prison. So Jamey had no representation. He knew nothing about this letter. We got it late. I think it came to you, Terry, correct? Or it came to somebody. And it took Jamey writing his own motion to deny that motion to have Woodruff recused from his current case, civil case, because he recused himself earlier once Binkley took it over. So after Binkley retired and there was another motion on Jamey's civil case, Woodruff tried sneaking in there and being the residing judge until Jamey caught it and made him and proved to him that he's already recused himself from that civil trial, so he's no longer able to be on it. And this is while Jamey's been sitting in prison for a year and a half. So we can go on and on about the corruption
at this point,
in Williamson County.
Yeah. And Joe, just to be clear, at this point, Jamey's been locked up for how long now, Terry? A year and 9 months?
He told me.
Oh, 2 years?
It'll be 2 years, November 23rd. It'll be 2 years. Yeah, so the case, you know, Woodruff was the judge who ruled on all of the civil motions leading up to this big criminal trial. So he's the one that ruled to destroy the text messages, which would have been crucial evidence in Jamey's defense in his criminal trial. He's the one that ordered all of the exorbitant amount of alimony and child support. He carried the whole case from August of 2021 until February of 2023. And it was at that time we're getting close to where it's almost criminal court time. Jamey's been charged at this point. That's when he goes and he decides. We all go to court thinking we're going to hear some of the motions that she had filed and Jamey was defending. And he said he decided he's not going to hear them, that he's going to turn the case over to Judge Binkley because it was just too much of a conflict of interest. So, you know, Binkley came on that day. We all left court. Nothing happened that day. He came back, had another hearing set for those motions in March of 2021. We all show up and Binkley says he's decided he's not hearing them that day, but he's going to hear the entire civil proceedings in June of 2021. At that point, Jamey's civil attorneys asked, why are we going to hear this when we have this criminal charge and court case hanging over his head? You know, how can you properly make a decision on this? Or he can't even speak freely because he's got to protect himself for this criminal trial. Binkley denied that. He said, nope, we're going to hear it now. We went through this long trial at the end of June in 2021. He never made a decision on that trial. After days and days of sitting in trial, no decisions were made. Jamey's still waiting to try to get custody again of his daughter. Fast forward from June of 2023 to November of 2023, that's when the criminal case happened. And Binkley still had not ruled on that civil trial. We still had no decision made. Of course, then the verdict came down the way it did. And Binkley didn't turn in his ruling until March of 2024. So he waited until Jamey was in the county jail. 2 weeks after Jamey got put in the county jail and was convicted, Miss Piper filed another motion asking the judge to release more of the house funds to her to pay all of her child support and alimony, which was granted. Jamey did not even, Jamey nor any of us knew that motion had even been filed, much less had the opportunity to show up and defend it. We were not told about that by his attorneys or notification by the court. So, Jamey got railroaded in that one. They set up the remainder of his money after all of the house proceeds had been divvied out. There was 40 some odd $1,000 left out of what he should have received over $250,000 from his home proceeds. It all went to her to pay all of her attorney fees, all of any support that she asked for, she got. The 40 some odd thousand was put in a court escrow account to be paid to her monthly over $2,100 while Jamey sat in jail, facing his sentencing hearing. So all of that happened. Then Binkley decides to give the civil order, which we have filed an appeal on and are awaiting the decision for that as well, where he got, railroaded again. So, yeah. And then like what Travis was saying, fast forward to just a couple months ago, something was filed again by his ex about the money and more alimony and all the things while he is in prison. And all of a sudden, Woodruff's back on the case. So that's when Jamey filed a motion asking him to recuse himself. Woodruff actually filed back and said he would not recuse himself, but then he was going to step down voluntarily, like the way he worded it, so that it didn't appear as if he recused himself. He stepped down voluntarily for some reason. We have the papers we can find and read.
So
another interesting thing, not to interrupt you, sorry, but another interesting thing is how the court system, excuse me, how the court system carried on the civil trial before the criminal trial took place. Normally, in any case, if there is a civil trial and a criminal trial going on simultaneously, the civil trial stops and the criminal trial proceeds over the civil trial for the exact reason Terri said. Jamey was protecting his butt in that civil trial. He couldn't say anything because it was going to be used against him in the criminal trial. So she knew what she was doing. She played the system and she had the judges in her back pocket.
Mm-hmm. And the collusion in that courthouse is rampant. And this is what the taxpayer needs to know, is that this can happen to anybody. And all these judges and attorneys, they all know each other. They're all playing in the same sandbox. Does anyone have a fair shake? With her being an attorney, apparently with the home, the marital home, apparently she allegedly said that she was working out of the home because she didn't have her own law office.
Correct.
How's that work?
And all of her files, all of her quote unquote client privilege files were in the cloud, which were shared on multiple devices within their home, including their 4 to 5-year-old daughter's device.
Yeah, the family iPad. And she then said, so he finds these messages on the iPad from this strange man, realizes it's a client of hers. She's helping through his divorce. The messages are not professional. He confronts her and she says, that's attorney-client privilege. And he's like, well, they were on our daughter's iPad, the iPad that she's using. And then she accused him of breaking into her files and finding this information as though he picked a lock on filing cabinet when he just saw him blatantly out there displayed on a device.
Mhm.
But when he was confronted, you know how broad attorney-client privilege is. So the judge just took that one sweeping motion, did not observe anything, didn't take the evidence into consideration. He just said destroy it all, without considering it at all. Which none of us are legal scholars. We're all new to this. We're also new to. I mean, Steve knows a lot more about corruption in the legal system from doing a documentary about it. But I think for me, I'm still a novice. But from what I've learned, my brother's an attorney. You don't just destroy evidence. You can take it and take the evidence away and say, I'm going to take this into consideration separately. But he didn't even consider it and just reprimanded Jamey in front of everyone, excoriated him in front of everyone, and just said, you're not allowed to have that. You need to destroy it right away. So it took away his defense.
Right.
It takes away her motive. It's like she got caught with something,
Mhm.
and he says, "What's up with this?" And she says, "Okay, let's attorney-client privilege, and I want a divorce." Well, if you don't get the impetus for why the divorce happened in the first place, that he caught her in this situation, allegedly having inappropriate relations with one of her clients, if you can't tell the jury that, then what's his defense? Now he's just a jealous, controlling husband going through divorce and, allegedly, commits a crime against his wife. But you don't go, well, why would she ask for divorce? What happened? So none of that
Right.
was allowed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. And Travis, and that's the narrative that the prosecution painted of Jamey, is that he was controlling. That's the angle they went with, and took things that happened throughout their marriage and words that were said and completely twisted them to look as if he was a controlling, manipulative person.
And there's no accusation of that. Jamey's never been accused of any violence of any kind or of being a bad husband. Certainly is regarded by all of his friends and family and neighbors as being an incredible father, who goes above and beyond, very dedicated person. I personally worked with him for many, many years and only observed him being an absolute gentleman. Women I worked with and worked with him closely have come to the stand, have written letters,
Mhm.
have provided witness testimony, character witness testimony to show that, he just doesn't have any record of this. There's never been any record. And interestingly, his ex never accused him of any of this. If you went through her social media, all talking about what a great father he is. Of course, that's all been scrubbed now. But, so he really didn't have a chance to have any kind of defense to defend himself. When what they used was all this, he's controlling, he's jealous, he's that. Well, why would a guy be jealous? Maybe it's because he found these incriminating messages, but they were denied having that as a tool to say, this is why he was curious about her behavior, because he caught her red-handed. And then, not to jump too far ahead, but now she's married to that man. She started a relationship with him, denied the relationship, said there's nothing going on between me and this client, said that in her deposition, sworn testimony, until Terri here was on vacation with her family in Orlando and saw his ex-wife with their daughter and this man in the airport in Florida on a vacation together. And it was pretty awkward, I'm sure, Terri. You can tell more about that. So she comes home, immediately changes her testimony, changes her deposition before the trial, and says, well, I wasn't in a relationship with him then, but I am now. And one of the most chilling things that I've ever witnessed was being at the sentencing hearing and watching her walk into the courtroom with her now fiance at the time. They're married now. When the judge ruled that he gets 10 years with no parole in prison, there she is with her new fiance. What was the impetus of this whole situation? The person that he knew she was having inappropriate relations with. There they are, engaged when he gets 10 years.
Well,
And she
that's
actually,
Yeah, I mean, he didn't stand a chance with that text messages evidence being destroyed, and then also there were two men's sperm in the DNA kit that was not allowed either on at the sentencing hearing that Travis was speaking about, she called a sexual assault, an SA expert to the stand and talked about how traumatized she was and how she would never be in a sexual relationship for who knows how long. Well, during one of the trials, and maybe Terry can correct me, but during one of the trials, her new husband, the individual she was having an affair with, testified that they were having a sexual relationship very short after they first started dating. So the fact that those two testimonies contradict one another, that was never brought up either. The judges just didn't even listen to it.
Yeah, the judge ruled that in his discretion that would be overly prejudicial against his ex-wife. If the jury was to learn that there was two men's DNA on the SA kit and that he had caught her with these messages, the judge ruled that would be overly prejudicial against her. And so he wasn't allowed to use that as evidence, which, a judge has pretty broad discretion as far as what he can allow in as evidence. And that was his whole case, without having that evidence available to say, here's why we're getting a divorce. And here's what her motive is. Her motive is to get everything she can. She's preserving her standing as an attorney. She doesn't want to get caught and exposed for having an inappropriate relationship with one of her clients during a divorce proceedings, and wanted to retain as much custody of her daughter as she could and keep leverage in financial leverage to get the assets out of the divorce. And she got all of it. She got every single thing she asked for. And he was absolutely railroaded without being able to, proffer a real defense without having the information available. Otherwise, it's just the he said, she said.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that their entire case was based upon this fiction of him being this jealous, controlling person without any evidence of that, really, rather than just blowing up small things. That's the whole narrative, is he's controlling and jealous. But they weren't able to answer that. Well, the reason why he was concerned about her was because she was clearly having an affair. But none of that was allowed.
I think every person on that jury, if they would have seen those text messages and known about the SA kit, they're going to have some doubt in their mind, because any normal human being, whether you're a female or a male or a transgender individual, if you find evidence of your partner having an affair on you, you're going to be upset and want to prove it's just really unfortunate that he did not have the ability to use the proper defense. And not only that, getting back to his sentence, he was sentenced to 10 years with no chance of parole, with no prior convictions. We sat in that courtroom and watched the same judge sentence somebody to 3 to 4 years for statutory rape. Statutory SA. We saw the judge in the sentencing hearing sentence another individual half the time, 30% of the 30% of the time Jamey got for statutory SA.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a good time too to just sort of talk about the fact that this is not the first time, throughout their marriage, his ex had, when things weren't going the way she wanted, had threatened divorce before, but they'd always made up and began having sexual relations again, even with this hanging over their head. It's not very normal, but that's just the way their relationship was. Mm-hmm. And so even during this divorce proceeding, they were intimate. He could prove one time because he had messages alluding to it. So she admitted to that time, but he talked about 4 different times when they had sexual relations leading up to the trial and the divorce while this is hanging over them. And she admitted to at least one of them. So this was not an unusual pattern. It wasn't like this was out of the blue that they had, were intimate. Mm-hmm. It just happened to be that this one time she decided to say, well, I'm not sure I consented to that. I was on Ambien, which she didn't.
Which is an interesting angle.
Yeah. Interesting angle, because there was no evidence of any kind of struggle or anything to allude any kind of force was used. She'd never been, you know, there'd never been any violence like that in their relationship of any kind. So, and there's no evidence of that on the kit, the RAPE kit that was conducted. But interestingly, she claimed, well, I take Ambien, so I was out of it. But that was nothing new. That'd been always the case. She'd always been taking that. She'd been prescribed that for many, many years and was a standard thing in their relationship.
That's another thing that, unfortunately, if we would have known what we know now, we would have. Jamey's original criminal case attorney did not call an Ambien expert to the stand because, per Jamey's words, his attorney told him that he couldn't afford it.
Well, how would he know that?
Exactly. So we just feel that that's a very interesting angle. Is she really used that to her? That was a big part of her story, is what she couldn't consent because she was so out of it. But she'd been taking this stuff every single day throughout their whole marriage, and we never got anybody from either side to speak to an Ambien expert.
Well, I also think it's interesting to add that, you know, she was on Ambien, and that was kind of what she claimed. I was on Ambien. I didn't know what was going on, and he RAPE'd me. However, when she went to file the police report, she wrote pages of great detail of the event. I turned this way. He put his hand this way. I said this. He said this. So it contradicts itself. How can you know every minute detail of that and yet be out of it? You know,
Also, the
and
fact that she got up right afterwards, went to the bathroom, got back in bed with him.
Yes.
You know, it's important to note too, he was already in the marital bed. She came and got in bed with him, had their situation happen. She got up, went to the bathroom, came back, slept through the night in the same bed with him. And, you know, the next day left her daughter with him for many hours. So if she's so concerned about this guy being some kind of a problem, why would she leave her 4-year-old daughter with him for hours afterwards and carry on the whole next day when she went and saw her mom, talked to her attorney, talked to her friends, went to church? And that wasn't until much later she decided, I'm going to go file this police report.
And she said in her deposition, if I'm remembering the wording exactly correct, but she didn't file the RAPE until she got her game plan together with her civil attorney.
Correct. She said she went to the mall with her mother to come up with a plan.
Yeah, the word game plan was for sure used.
Absolutely.
I think also it's interesting to note that during the civil proceedings before the criminal trial ever happened, you know, Jamey had been kicked out of the house and had not been able to go back to the home in almost a year. She started dividing up the property. And so she got to go through first and get everything that she wanted out of the house and put stickers. Basically, when Jamey got to go in there with his attorney, nothing was left but all of the old stuff that they had in the junk. But, you know, one of the big things that Jamey requested was he wanted the bed, you know, and she argued and fought over that bed. Now, I'm sorry, I'm a woman. If I had been RAPED in a bed, there is no chance I'm wanting to fight for that bed and keep it to continue to sleep in it. There's just so many things that just don't add up, that don't make sense. I wanted to go back to too what Travis was saying about the motion with the text messages and everything. You know, that happened in the fall of 21, right after the accusation. That was the very first motion she filed, was that Jamey had these text messages. And Judge Woodruff was the one that heard that case. And if you read the transcript, you will see he said, I'm not even going to read those. I don't care what's on them. You just destroy them. And so, you know, he took into no consideration that those could be used if he were to be charged. He had not been charged yet at that point with that crime. And he not only reprimanded Jamey, but he reprimanded Jamey's first attorney so much that he was like, hey, this is too much. And it was an attorney that wasn't a Williamson County attorney. And he was like, I don't even feel comfortable. He got so reprimanded with that attorney. He said, I thought I was getting in trouble, or he was. So, it just, Jamey didn't stand a chance from the beginning with any of these judges in that court.
There was a lot of attorney bias as well. Obviously his first criminal attorney, who we all feel didn't do some obvious questions and motions and tasks. And he was afraid of Woodruff and Binkley. You could see it. But it was very interesting. Her representation wasn't from Williamson County either. They were from Clarksville, which is an hour and 10 minutes west of Nashville, which ironically enough is where her father and her family lives. So there was a lot of attorney bias. I mean, that her attorney walked in the courtroom and you would have thought that he had tried 500 cases in that courtroom, the way that the judge was buddy with him.
Well, I think
they're very familiar.
I think it's important to note that they were very familiar with one another. Her father is the ex-mayor of Clarksville and was for many years, and you can go back and look at records where he has been in and around the politics and judges throughout Middle Tennessee. They're in the same regional area. They know each other, and her family has known he's a successful land developer in Clarksville, was a politician. This attorney that they use for the civil portion, I believe, had a lot to do with, the charge that came down for Jamey for the criminal. He was her father's longtime attorney. Definitely had prior relationships with these judges.
Well, and another thing too is we kind of have proof that there's a lot of connection between the Piper family and the judges. The day before his direct appeal to the state for the criminal trial, one of our team members discovered that one of the judges that was going to be sitting and hearing the direct appeal had contacts with the Piper family. So they recused themselves they did the right thing. They recused themselves from being on that panel of judges. But there's just a lot of connection, like Terri mentioned. There's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of property shingles on both sides, on her family side as well as the judge's side. We've got some people on our team who've discovered property shingles in Arkansas from these Williamson County judges. Who knows what they're doing? I'm not going to accuse anybody of doing anything in public, but I think we all know that seems a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
If you look up Johnny Piper, the ex-mayor of Clarksville, first articles that pop up are pretty interesting. I'll say there's a lot of history there, and I also think it's important to add the detail, if I understand correctly, that she had originally hired an attorney and taken counsel, and that original attorney, she was asking for too much. She wanted most of the custody. She wanted most of the assets from the divorce proceedings, everything. And the first divorce attorney said, "There's no way you're going to get all this. You don't. This is not a reasonable request." And she fired that first attorney, and then went and got her dad's attorney, who knew everybody.
It's important to note too that first attorney that she had was one out of Williamson County. This was prior to the accusation. So in June of 21, they had gone to mediation with Jamey, his attorney, and Miss Piper and her attorney. They went into the mediation, and his ex-wife wanted pretty much all of the custody except 1 weekend a month, or so. It was something just ridiculous. And this is Jamey who really is the primary and was the primary caretaker of their daughter. She preferred him. He was always there. He did not miss anything for that child. He was always there for his baby. He adored her, or still adores her. Anyway, so that was prior to the accusation. She wanted all the money from the house, claiming that, when they got married, their down payment came from selling her home, but Jamey actually put more money into it, paying off all of her debt that they had when they got married. And I think that was premeditated from the beginning. In my mind, that was her idea. He said when they got married, she said, "We'll use my equity to put down on the home, and we'll take your equity and pay off all my debt." And, his equity was a greater amount. And, he's the one that the home was in his name, not her name, because she couldn't get approved for it. So just so many things with details that we could just, the layers are so deep, for I think premeditated. But what I was going to say and where I was going with that, I'm sorry. In June, when they had the mediator said, you're not getting all this. This is a divorce that, it's going to go 50-50 in Tennessee. That's how it works.
Mhm.
She did the week after fired that attorney. She hired her father's attorney, her longtime father's, Roger Manis was her attorney out of Clarksville. It was after that about a month later, the accusation came down. And it's interesting because in the criminal trial, she testified that throughout that summer, things had been escalating with Jamey and things had been getting more and more scary and he had become more and more controlling. And that was her testimony. She didn't have any specific examples to back that up. And one thing that Jamey's attorney didn't do was let Jamey explain to the jury the things they did do. For example, that year on the 4th of July, less than a month before she accused him, she actually invited Jamey to go on a bike ride to see the Nolensville fireworks show. And Jamey has text messages showing this. Like Jamey said, we rode down dark streets with no streetlights together as a family with our children. And she was not afraid of me. She invited him to come to a car show. They'd gone to meals together. They walked to school together on Jamey's son's first day of school. They went to this elementary school was in their neighborhood, and they would walk back and forth to the school a lot. That first day of school, which was early August, they walked to school together. I have a photo on Jamey's phone where they all took a picture together, smiling like a happy family. So it's just not consistent with her behavior and what she told the jury. So, that's why I say I think that this civil attorney who is friends with her father and her family helped construct this whole scenario and narrative of Jamey being, you know, and she literally said, things had escalated that summer when it was very much not escalating that summer. She was leading him on and giving him small glimpses of hope, which is what she did to him all the time. Their relationship was a push-pull their entire marriage. She would push him away. She would not speak to him for a month. Then she'd pull him back in. And that's just how they lived. And so to Jamey, that's what was happening. He was thinking, we're getting back together, because that's what she always did.
You're
And that was
absolutely
the
right.
pattern.
A pattern.
He even spoke. I visited him yesterday in prison, and that's exactly what he told me. He said, "Steve, I wish I would have just ran and ran and ran,
Oh, yeah.
but all I wanted to do was keep my family together." And I think that's one thing that I don't even think any of us think about being on Jamey's team. One of the biggest tragedies out of this whole situation is a brother and sister have been ripped apart from one another. His son will probably not be able to see his daughter until we prove his innocence and get his rights back. And his grandmother, who the daughter loved, who was Terry's mother and Jamey's mother, was a babysitter 90% of the time. I mean, she loved the fact that she can't see the one side of the family that loved her more than anything in the world.
Mhm.
And her brother, who's gone through all of this trauma, these kids are going to be scarred for the rest of their lives because
Yeah.
of this situation. And nobody thinks about these poor little kids. Of
No.
course we're thinking about Jamey. He's lost everything, but nobody thinks about the kids in these situations. And it's just what she has done, in my opinion, is straight out child abuse.
It is, because she must not know anything about the adverse childhood experience score, which you can Google. And I think it's like 14 to 16 questions. One of them is are your parents divorced? Has any of your parents been incarcerated? So what that will do is shorten a person's lifespan. So yes, that is child psychological abuse.
Yeah, just the whole side of the family is it's just heartbreaking. She had what, 10 cousins?
Yes.
They went to every birthday party, every event. They were a really close family.
Very
And
close.
that was really all from Jamie's side. You know, her side, she has her mom and dad and a sister that no longer speaks to her. And it's just a much more solitary single child experience that she's having now, unfortunately. Um, you know, with what I think is an abusive parent who manipulated her, and God knows what she's being told about her father and why she's being removed from all of her cousins. And these are her best friends. It's a very close family. Every Christmas, every birthday is all gone now. And
Summer play dates, spring break,
Mm.
and my mom she did not miss when Jamie started having to have supervised visits. My mom and stepdad went to every single visit for not the entire time because they wanted Jamie to have some time with his daughter, but for a portion of the time because they wanted to see that was the only chance that they got to see their granddaughter. And they're very close. There was one time when the divorce proceedings started, they were all at swim lessons together with the daughter, and the daughter, as always, said, I want to go home with daddy.
Mm.
And, the Miss Piper said, no, you're going with me, and like grabs the child, and the child's crying and wanting to go with daddy and Nana. And that was part of her problem is that she was very jealous of the love that our side of the family had because her side of the family didn't have that. And I know that for a fact because Miss Piper told me that. She told me stories of her childhood and growing up and how lonely she felt. Um, and so my mother, after Jamie was convicted and put in prison, my mother, we've gone to several attorneys to try to get grandparents' rights, and they all want an exorbitant amount of money because they have seen the pattern of what Miss Piper and the Piper family will do,
Mm.
dragging things through court and dragging them out. And the price that they have given us to take her to court to see my granddaughter is something we can't afford because all of the money we have is we're trying to get Jamie free. And so my mom just reached out by email, explained to Miss Piper, I love my grandbaby. This is my granddaughter. She's precious to me, all of these things. I would love to see her. Can I go eat lunch with her at school?
Mhm.
Can I things that where Miss Piper would, should not have a problem with a grandmother, a loving grandmother doing. And my mom got a one sentence response, do not ever contact me again. And so my mother, who, is aging, and I mean, her heart is broken, not only because her son's in prison, but she's lost a granddaughter whom
Mhm.
she adores. And it's just broken this family. All the little girl cousins don't get to see this, their little cousin anymore. And what's so sad about it is throughout the marriage, Miss Piper always used to tell my mother I hit the jackpot when it came to mother-in-laws. My mom has a stack of cards that she wrote her on holidays and Mother's Day. I love you so much. Thank you for all you do for my family. We're so blessed. All of these things. Well, after the accusation, they had the order of protection hearing. Miss Piper got on the stand at that hearing and told the judge that she did not think that their daughter would be safe with my mother. My mother, who is a retired school teacher, over 30 years teaching in the school systems, teacher of the year, Sunday school teacher, the sweetest person you will ever meet. And, she got up there and lied about my mom. So my mom never, has never gotten to see her granddaughter, or Jamie's son, who's now 15, hasn't seen his sister in over 2 years now at this point. And he struggles. He
Mm.
has the change in him is very evident in what he's been going through.
Mhm. You know, Now, so she is now on husband number three.
Yes.
Correct.
So when she met Jamie, how fast did that relationship move?
Physically, it moved the first night they met.
Mhm.
They met in a bar and went home that night and had relations with each other. They were on and off a little slow for about the first month because Jamie was still he was broken up with the mother of his son, but they were still sort of trying to figure out what were they going to do. And then Jamey and Miss Piper became serious pretty quickly after that. And even during their dating, it was on and off again, on and off again. In fact, the night before their wedding, she said she went into one of her tirades like she used to do, and she said she was calling off the wedding because Jamey did not make nice enough dinner reservations for them to go eat at after their wedding that night. And that day when we all got to the wedding, I have a picture of her face that I took. Just she was in the background, and we were taking some pictures, and we happened to capture that. But she was angry and would not really hardly speak to any of us. Very short, hello. It was the one of the most odd things I've ever seen. But she was mad at Jamey because he hadn't made dinner reservations. She decided to go ahead with the wedding, but didn't, was not friendly and loving, and it was when she got out there on the altar, it was all, her fake smiles and her fake, it just should have been some clues for us back then as to the type of person we were dealing with.
Well, it seems like
Yeah.
we're all learning about these personality disorders. And I know people throw around the term narcissist, which we're not supposed to do because we're not, psychiatrists, right? But it just appears that with the moving too fast and kind of ruining her own wedding, trying to ruin it for everybody else. And that's what they do. These personality disorders ruin fun times for everybody else, even for their own kids. It's such a shame what she's doing to her daughter and
Yes.
Jamey.
Yes. And, she claimed that she loved Jamie's son, who wasn't her biological child, but she was around that little boy for several years. And even at court testified that she loved him. She actually tried to get custody of him when they first started these proceedings. She was trying to get custody and eventually dropped that because she realized she couldn't do that. But she wanted visitation with this child because she claimed she got on the stand and claimed how much she loved him and cared so much for him, yet was willing to do this to him. And now has kept him not only from his father, but his sister.
That's creepy
I
because
think it's,
had she gotten
yeah,
supervised visits, who knows what she would be telling him.
Absolutely. Well, and
sure.
his biological mother said absolutely not. And this is interesting. She did not want Jamey to be around his son's biological mother ever. She did not allow her to come to the house to even drop off the child. She was not allowed to come in their driveway and just treated her terribly. However, when she made the accusation, she tried to reach out to Jamie's son's mother and become friends with her and say, oh, we have some things in common and blah, blah, blah. And Jamie's mother said, absolutely not.
Mhm.
Jamey are very close. She loves Jamey.
Mhm.
Her husband loves Jamey. And I think that's a big testament to the kind of person that Jamey is.
Yeah.
They go visit him once a month at the prison now, even still 2 years in.
And they were at every hearing, every trial, every single time they could be in support of Jamey. Her and her husband showed up to support him every single time. They have a great relationship. And I mean, they have testified, they've been done interviews with us. They're storing a bunch of Jamey's stuff in their garage. I mean, they couldn't be more supportive of Jamey and absolutely refused to say anything negative against him. She tried her best to get them over on her side, and it didn't work. They saw
Well,
right through it.
yes, and part of the tragedy during the sentencing hearing is they show up to support Jamey at that sentencing hearing, and when they arrived, they served her with Jamey's ex with a subpoena to appear on the stand that day. They called her up first thing, and they took text messages and incidents that happened between Jamey when they were both saying ugly things to each other and at the beginning, and that was because Miss Piper had gotten involved and was pushing this agenda for Jamey to take custody from his mother. Anyway, they took these things, they twisted them all out of context. during the sentencing hearing and made her testimony be against Jamey, who she actually came there to support.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, the prosecution also called one of Jamey's ex-girlfriends that he had previously to his son's mother to get her to testify against him. And she said, absolutely not. I love Jamey. She actually called me and said, they have tried to get me to testify against him. I would never say anything negative. Jamey would have never, ever done that. And since then, I have about 5 ex-girlfriends that regularly communicate with me that love Jamey. They're married now. They're happily married. They have families of their own, and they're still close because Jamey was a good guy. And, you know, there's one that sends money
Mhm.
on a monthly basis to help support Jamey, one of his ex-girlfriends. So, I mean, it's just a man that has ex-girlfriends that are in his corner with an accusation like this.
Mm.
I think that says a lot.
It does. It does. And I, if I was the third husband stepping into this, he should be very careful, wouldn't you think?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just going back to her first husband, they were married for about a year
Hmm.
and it wasn't going well. And she made some really hard, he was talking to people in a chat room, being maybe a little inappropriate with some of the ladies in there. But she found out about this and she just scorched earth, said, I will accuse you of trying to have me murdered because of
Oh, she
comments you
did.
made. Yeah. And
Wow.
He
she
told
got
me.
everything.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting because she testified on the stand during Jamie's criminal trial that she did not ever say that her first husband tried to have her killed. However, I didn't get to be called to the stand, but if I would, I would testify under oath. She 100% told me that her first husband, that she found it in a chat room that he was asking someone to drive her off a bridge. I 100% she told me that. But denied it on the stand. And Jamey, I believe, has that in a deposition where she did admit to it, but then lied about it on the stand. So,
There's a lot of those things. I also want to get this in there somewhere, that when the accusation was made, um, by his ex-wife, she uh, she used to have a couple of legal partners in a law firm, and they independently contacted Jamey, and they were really afraid to speak publicly about her because they know how scary she can be and how litigious she can be. So I mean, they're talking on WhatsApp. You know, they're that spooked. They weren't even texting. They were like, when we talk this way, they
Mhm.
met him privately and said, be careful. We used to work with her. We did not end things well. She is scary. We watched her destroy people,
Oh,
and she makes it a mission to just completely destroy somebody that she sees as an enemy. You know, there's those certain people that they can't just win. They have to completely crush the person. That's such a strange thing. I'll never understand, but they told Jamey rather, be careful. This is what she's capable of. And they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to reach out to him independently and give
mhm.
him this warning, but they said, be careful. And they're afraid to speak. You know, they don't want to be subpoenaed. They're afraid to speak out against her. And a lot of people we've contacted, they'll say one thing candidly to us, and then when it comes down to it, we want to record them. We want to actually get them on record, and they will change their tune last minute.
Yeah.
You know,
There are
she
multiple people that are afraid of her and her family, and they know information. They're just afraid for their careers.
Mm.
We have an individual who spoke to us off the record who was having an affair with her during their marriage, who he knew about. She was hiding it. And he said exactly what Travis just said. She will go to every single angle and end that she needs to destroy somebody. And he's even told us off the record that her daddy comes in and saves the day by either paying somebody or making sure she keeps her job. But we've spoken to multiple people And we've actually hired somebody on our team to try to track some of these people down, and they just will not speak. They love Jamey to death, but they're worried about their own behind. And at a certain point, you can't blame them because we know how vindictive her and her family are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look where Jamey is. If it can happen to Jamey, it can happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It really can. And I think that's another major point. Like, this can happen to anybody if you're just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. I
the
mean,
wrong person.
he was, the wrong, with the wrong person. He was literally just trying to save his marriage and and be a great dad, which he was to his kids. And look where it got him.
Mm-hmm.
She also testified under oath, one of the ones that that we know for a fact that off the record has told us that he did have an affair with her. She testified under oath that she had never had any sexual relations with this man. And we know now that we had suspected it, but now we do know the truth of that. So
He just won't go on the record.
But
right.
yeah,
We have
off the
a list
record,
of
he
people.
came right out and said, yeah, absolutely. He didn't have any hesitation. And here, this is just another example of how the first trial was so mishandled. Here's a person that we suspected that she had an affair with, and he was never questioned. He was never interviewed by his first attorney to go. This is just because there's no defense. It's a he said, she said. So all you can do is go to credibility and say, well, is she telling the truth about their marriage? And was she this faithful, perfect wife that she's painting herself to be, who is just this victim? Well, here's a guy that we found him on LinkedIn. He wasn't hard to find. We said, is this the guy? And then he said, yep, sure enough. Yeah, we had an affair. And, she told me they were on a break or whatever. And then
She
then,
tried convincing him to leave his wife and have a baby with him.
right.
Well,
And
also, what's interesting about this particular individual, they spent a good amount of time in the criminal trial talking about this individual, and they turned that whole situation. Jamey had a hard time with this individual. She called him her work husband. That was what he was in the phone. They went to lunch together every day. She was spending more time with this man than she was her own husband, and Jamey had a problem with that. I would too if my husband was with a woman like that, just inappropriately. And so anyway, they spent a lot of time building this narrative of Jamey setting these boundaries with this man, because she eventually hired him to come and work at this legal firm that she had with these partners that Travis was talking about earlier. And Jamey didn't want her to hire this man because they had already had a lot of discussion and issues with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they spent time at the criminal trial saying Jamey was controlling and demanding and was holding her back on her career because she couldn't have after dinner drinks with this man and be in the office alone with this man. And that was part of the boundaries that they had set up together, that she set up, because I was there when they did it. Now we know Jamey was justified in having those feelings because she had been sleeping with him. So, but the jury heard that he was controlling all about this man. Now we know it was completely the opposite.
Right. It sounds like she was getting around.
Yeah, this is just what we know about. This is just what we know about, and that the fact that this was happening, this whole narrative again in the trial was Jamey was this jealous, irrational guy. When you find out that all of his fears and suspicions were validated, were true, his gut was correct, and the jury was never allowed to hear any of that. These people didn't come to the stand. They weren't called as witnesses. There was no witnesses called. Even Terri here, his sister, who knows all the history and ins and outs. I can't imagine why they wouldn't have called you to the stand in the criminal trial to give your testimony about your incredibly close observations of their entire relationship. I mean, just having you on the stand, she could have been perjured right then and there because of things mistruths she told on the stand. You could have testified against and said, here's, and you have proof. that she was lying.
Yeah, it's
It's just,
extremely disappointing, like Travis said, that no one was called to the stand in Jamey's defense. And I firmly believe that his lawyer was afraid of the judges. I mean, he just didn't give him a chance.
And they had Jamey scared to death too to give his testimony on the stand. And I think because of the patterns that we had seen in the courtrooms all throughout the civil trial and pre-criminal trial of just Jamey not even, I mean, climbing an uphill battle at every turn. He was terrified when he got on the stand, and I think it came across. They told him like, don't show emotion, don't be cool. You know, he wanted to show, I loved my wife, I loved my family. I didn't want us to be apart. I'm trying to save the family unit for my children. But you know, he got up there and it didn't come across the way it should have from his heart because they had him scared to death. His attorneys had him scared to death. The way they did not coach him properly on how to show his true self.
and just to go back on him being terrified, anyone would be after the way he was treated, like these tactics that they used. For instance, it was getting cold and he couldn't be at his own house, right? So he asked his ex, "Can I go back and get some of my clothes?" You know, because she had an order of protection, so he couldn't go on his property.
Mm.
And she said, "Sure, you can come get your clothes and your son's clothes." And she packed up all their stuff and put it in boxes and left them with the neighbor across the street, who was one of Jamey's best friends and his minister. And so he went by there and picked up the clothes, talked to his friend in the driveway for about 10 minutes, and then left. Well, she hid a camera in her garage, a ring camera facing that house. Immediately called her attorney and said, "He violated his order of protection. Here's a photograph of him across the street. I don't feel safe." When she told him to go pick up the clothes there, and they went and picked him up. He had to turn himself in. He had to spend the night in jail and post bail. The police came and grabbed him.
Had
Not,
to go
not
to
to
court.
mention, he had to go to court after that, and then, skipping forward, when he finally got arrested for her SA allegation, this is the day he was supposed to get custody back of his daughter. Okay, 1 year after she made the allegation, for whatever reason, that same day when she was supposed to get his, what a coincidence, get his daughter back, they went and they surrounded his mother's house, armed police officers
At
with
6 a.m.
6 a.m. He was not a flight risk. He had complied with every single order they'd ever made.
Mhm.
And for some reason, they felt like on the day he might get custody back of his daughter, surround the house, break in, make a big show of it, and take him into custody. It's just so ridiculous. And
They
also,
all,
mind you, this is the same police squad she went over and took a self-defense course from. She brought them cookies and pastries, posted pictures of that for Instagram and everything. And then that's who she called whenever she wanted to try to pin something on him. At one point they had an argument and she tried to claim that Jamey was being erratic. And when really what he did is he left the house. They had an argument. He left the house, went to a coffee shop, let things cool off, and came back. And there's police there. And she was trying to claim that, oh, he tried to hit me with his car. And,
and she
and he's
jumped
like,
on the hood of his car, is what she
right.
did.
And there's the witnesses saw her jump on the hood of his car. Well, the police show up, they conduct an investigation, and they go, "This is absolutely not true. I'm sorry, man. We just don't believe your story. There's no evidence that any of this happened. And we'd appreciate you not calling us this way." So she was really trying to set him up, and when it didn't work. And, speaking of a great witness to bring on the stand, bring the police officer. It
Right.
just goes, all you can do is go to her credibility. And this is another example of her trying to manufacture some kind of evidence, and it didn't work. I mean, we go
Well,
into as many, many more times she tried to manufacture things that didn't
Well,
work on her side.
and we did
speak
bring that police officer, the one
exactly.
that summer, he came to one of the civil hearings and the judge dismissed him before it started and said, "I won't be hearing from you." And he dismissed that police officer that came to testify that there was nothing going on that was threatening in any way.
And,
So,
and she's wasting taxpayer dollars using these policemen. And the taxpayer needs to know these things. People
yeah.
do this. to their
It's
exes.
interesting to note, yeah, it's interesting to note too that the cookies to the Nolensville Police Department and the self-defense class didn't start until after she hired her father's attorney. That's when all of those sorts of things started happening.
Hmm.
It was just weeks prior to the accusation that she had done that and posted pictures on Instagram.
This is just terrible. Has she ever had a psych eval?
I have no idea.
I mean, that would have been another thing that would have been great, right?
Right.
In the criminal trial, have a mandatory psych eval, an independent thing, because she had a woman come on and testify about her SA allegation. And it was a counselor that was
Dr.
found by her.
Berryman.
What's her name?
Dr.
Dr.
Berryman.
Berryman,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she, who was brought on by her attorney,
Her civil
uh,
attorney.
her civil attorney said, get this lady on the stand to testify for you about the SA. And you know, she was definitely a great witness for her side because she was, supposedly this expert, but she's an expert witness. These people get paid to come on and say what they're supposed to say, and they get paid to do it. And that's what happened for her. And it would have been great to have an independent and be an expert, independent psych evaluation person. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to go looking through her relationship history, her friendships that don't last. You know, it's pretty clear that she is a troubled person,
Right.
which there's no crime against that. It's just the way she has weaponized herself against our friend.
Mm-hmm. Weaponize the legal system, the taxpayer dollars. And with an innocent man sitting in prison, that's also wasting taxpayer dollars.
Yes.
I also think it's worth noting that, we're all people that know victims of sexual assault. Or, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
we're
You're
all
good.
people that know victims of SA. And I have people that are dear to me in my life that have had horrible things happen to them at the hands of bad people. And so it would give me great pause to ever support someone if I thought even there's a chance at all that there's any way they could have possibly committed this crime. And I'm a huge advocate for victims. I would never ever support someone unless I was 1,000% positive that he is innocent. And I know this man, I know this person, and it's just very telling when you look at the relationships he's held his whole life. Friends from high school, friends from church, this whole community of filmmakers around him. I mean, you meet thousands of people when you work in the film industry. He works on Super Bowl commercials. He's a very, very talented artist that had an incredible career that was still growing. He worked for me for a long time on my biggest job I ever had. I had a television show here, and he handled hundreds of people and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of budgets and built incredible sets. Never once did I ever have one person ever say to me a cross word about him. He was in very difficult situations. It's a hard job. A lot of pressure, a lot of money. You mess up, it could be a big deal. And just about every crew member I had lost their temper at some point and got mad and frustrated and yelled at somebody. And he just never does that. He's just really makes everybody feel heard. And Steve can testify to that too. He's hired him many times in high pressure situations. In fact, that before I knew about what happened, one of the last jobs I was on with Jamey, this is in the middle of, mind you, incredible pressure, scary divorce, scary criminal allegations. And Jamey had to dress an entire suburban neighborhood to look like it was snowing outside in August. And it did an incredible job, huge pressure, big commercial. And here he was just making magic happen and was such a professional. I could tell there was something behind his eyes. I said, "How you doing?" And he was like, he didn't get into it, but I could tell there was something wrong. But just that he was able to conduct himself that way with all this pressure and never lost his temper on anyone, just says a lot to me about his character.
Mhm. Mhm.
Absolutely. I'll attest to that as well. That specific shoot was a shoot that my company produced. And it was on that shoot too, Travis. I had always known what had been going on, but on that shoot, after the shoot, I said, "Hey, let's go for a beer. I'd love to chat with you." And he really told me everything about it. You know, on that shoot in the middle of the summer, he's wearing pants because he's got an order of protection on, so he's got an ankle bracelet on. He
Mhm.
doesn't want the film industry to know about this because his reputation is on the line. And in our industry, Travis can attest to this. Your reputation is everything you have. Um, Jamey was the individual who walked the girl PAs to their car at night when it was dark because they felt the safest with him. Jamey was the individual who would problem solve on set and save me as an executive producer of my company thousands of dollars because he found a more effective way to do it. He is a very, very well respected production designer across the country. He's worked with celebrities, he's worked with anybody and everybody you can think of. Like Travis said, Super Bowl commercials, big music artists, music videos. He just is an individual that when we come across people who haven't heard about this case, it just their jaw drops to the floor. And like what Terry said, there are hundreds and thousands of women supporting Jamey, saying there's no way he did this.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, when you look at the letters that we received in support of him and the people that came for him. You have people that have been buddies with Jamey since they were 8 years old.
Mhm.
He had two childhood friends from like third grade that were at his hearing. You have ex-girlfriends at his hearing, the mother of his son. You have church members that Jamey has done things for. You had neighbors, all the neighbors loved him except the one neighbor that was her friend.
Mhm.
You know, you've got just people from every area, the film community to church to childhood to girlfriends, all there to support Jamey. And every one of the letters, you see the theme if you were to read all these letters, they all say the same thing about Jamey, you know, and what his character and what an upstanding guy he is. He'd give you the shirt off his back, would
Mhm.
never hurt a flea. So,
Yeah, and it's chilling also when
Mhm.
you look at all these people that are coming to support Jamey that are his friends and family and relatives and people he's known his whole life. And you look on her side of the aisle and there's nobody.
Mm-hmm.
There's no friends. There's not a here she's this person who is this alleged victim who had this horrible thing happen and all this stuff. Not a single person. Her mom was there and her dad and a few people that random people, but where's her like buddies? Where are those
Mhm.
people?
Yeah, it was
It
more like
just
150 supporters for Jamey and 5 supporters for the accuser.
yeah.
well, I mean, and that's just the pattern of her relationships. When they were getting married, she was having her little bridesmaids girls thing, and I went, you know, as Jamie's sister, I'm his only sister, and there were a few other women. We were getting our nails done, and it was like two of them were the two women that Travis talked about earlier that at that time were her partners at the law firm, and then like one other friend, no childhood friends, like
Mhm.
no long-term friends. It was very odd.
Yeah, it was rigged. It has had to have obviously been rigged. That whole thing.
I mean, it goes on and on. There's so many details to this. Every time we turn a corner, going, we're going to get off this podcast and go, oh my gosh, we didn't tell her about this. There's so much. Just at every turn, there's just these red flags on and on and on. I mean, it's so crazy.
I think that's
And
one of the
yeah,
biggest, not to interrupt you, sorry, Travis, but
no,
I think that's one of the biggest issues is when we try to inform people about this case and this just terrible misjustice that it's really hard for people to wrap their heads around because it's so much information and it's so much blatant information that you're just like, there's no way this could happen.
Oh, it can
right.
happen. I've been doing this podcast since 2020 and it can happen. It's very scary out there, people.
100%. I had not dealt really with anything in our legal system until all of this, and I have lost all faith
Hmm.
in our legal system. It is, I don't even call it the justice system anymore because it's not just.
Mm-mm.
It's, you know, who do you know? Whose back have you rubbed?
Hmm.
And in this particular situation too, like, so my brother just got out of law school, my older brother, right? And he immediately got sworn in as an assistant DA in the domestic violence sector. So he's an assistant DA working on all these cases, and he's taken a great interest in this case because he knows Jamey a little bit. And he's my brother, and he knows he's concerned for my friend, and he played devil's advocate pretty hard. He's my brother, it's his job. So he really, and he doesn't know Jamey as well as I do. So he really went in with as clear eyes as you can possibly have, trying to understand what happened. And he, having freshly out of law school, now he's an assistant DA, couldn't believe it. And just to sort of test things, he talked to his colleagues, that work in the domestic violence sector of Davidson County, and their jaws, everyone's jaw hit the floor. Every time he tells the story, they go, wait, walk me back through that again, and they just can't believe it. I mean, just the broader issues of the case before getting into all the details we've started to talk about. Just the fact that here's a woman who is an attorney in Williamson County, and she's a divorce attorney, and her divorce trials held in the same county with the judge that she's familiar with in the same place. It's just that immediately is a huge red flag
Oh,
just
yes.
on its face. And
And it's really disheartening too, because at his sentencing trial, we all sat outside and we prayed for Jamey. We were all in shock. And we asked his attorney, we said, why wasn't this case taken out of this county? And he put his head down and couldn't even answer us.
They probably wouldn't let him move it anyway
Yeah,
with all the
Probably
connections.
not.
they probably wouldn't let him move it, and he was probably right. Unfortunately, probably would have pissed the judge off.
Hmm.
You know,
Unfortunately, I think you're right, Travis.
and this judge was not a nice guy. I mean, I'm not expecting them to be like warm and fuzzy towards us, but he treated all these people that showed up for Jamey. These are good church going people, pastors, friends, church friends, um, you know, old people that are friends with his parents that he's known forever. These are
Professional.
good, professional, good American citizens standing up for their friend and this injustice. And that judge treated us like we were absolute trash. He did not like us. It was really this feeling of resentment that we were even there. And he said all
Yes.
these things from the stand, like, I know there's a lot of public interest in this case. And we're going, public interest? This isn't in the news. This is just his friends and family. This isn't a publicized case. This is just, these are all people that know him personally. We're not here paying people to show up. These are people that love this man and know he is innocent, that showed up and it was like he treated us like we were criminals, threatened us that if we made a sound, here's Jamey's poor mother in the courtroom, and he basically said, if you make a peep at sentencing, then I'm going to hold you in contempt of court and carry you out of here in handcuffs. It was just egregious amounts of sort of threatening, cruel, rude behavior, very snarky towards us.
Yeah,
It's
this
just,
I
I'd
was
think you
never
hit
see
it on the
anything
head.
like it.
it was rigged. From what
Yeah, I
you're
think you hit it
telling
on the
me.
head when you said resented us. There was a ton of
Yeah.
resentment.
Hmm.
We were threatened. We were made to feel like we were criminals.
Jamie's pastor, when we made the video, he said in the video, I was reviewing it last night. He said, I was afraid to scratch my nose that I would be held in contempt of court. I mean, it was intense, scary.
Oh.
Another thing that just really, I just I continue to think about is, after the trial, the sentencing, we are standing outside. At one point, we were standing in a huddle with two attorneys. And then we began, after they left, we were holding hands and we were praying for Jamey. And these are the kind of people, this is what we're doing. the police are escorting her family and her civil attorney to their cars as if we're going to have a riot or attack them. You know, we'd gone for 2.5 years. No one had tried to contact anyone from their family. No one had tried
Mhm.
to contact or do anything. Nobody with a criminal record in our family or in the friends that were there. And every time, not just the sentencing, when we went back at the criminal after they escorted them out every time to all the way to their cars as if they were in danger.
That's that false narrative personality disorders use, is that they're afraid of what they start playing the victim. They all do it.
It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. We're not even making eye contact with these people. We don't want to look at them or be near them.
Hmm.
And the police that are escorting them out are giving us the looks as if we're troublemakers, you know,
It's all a
praying.
setup. It's all a setup.
Yeah.
Interesting too that her father, this powerful man, ex-mayor of Clarksville, whenever I saw him at the I wasn't there. None of us were there for the criminal trial except for Terry because we didn't know about it. So we came on into the situation when we were only allowed to be there for sort of the aftermath, the sentencing hearing and things like that, which we've been to all that stuff. There's her dad, just cool as a cucumber, acting like you'd think he was at a potluck. Here he is waiting to see if his daughter is going to get justice, and this horrible thing allegedly happened to her, and he's whistling in the hallway. He is absolutely fine. He's stretched out on the pew like he's just watching a movie, And same thing at his appeal hearing that just happened. Here we are. There's not a lot of people there. She's not there. This is when his latest appeal, but he's there, and you can see him. I was out of town. I watched this streaming on YouTube. A lot of these trials, they stream them on YouTube live, and I can see him. He's sitting in the back row again, just cool as a cucumber, not a care in the world. It just seemed like his presence is looming pretty large
Yes.
here.
He was in direct eye contact of those judges on the appeal.
There it
Yeah.
is. There it is. Have you ever looked up the judge campaigns? I don't know. Does Tennessee appoint judges or are they voted in?
I'm fairly certain they're
Or is it
voted,
maybe
but
a mix of
Yeah,
two?
I'm not sure.
probably a mix, but I know that for instance, his judge, yeah, they're voted in, I believe.
Okay,
Uh,
because if you go on transparencyusa.org and you type in the attorney's names and the judge's names, and you can find out their campaign donations.
What's it called? Transparency?
Interesting.
Yeah, transparencyusa.org.
I
Good
think
to
that
know.
her family has multiple LLCs.
There it is.
I think that it's worth looking, but I think it'd be hard because I know that they have multiple LLCs. They can put money through.
Tennessee's not even a state on here to go to.
Okay, you know why? It's because people they need help with their site to get donations so they can start adding a state.
Oh,
Yep.
But it
Let's make some
already,
donations, guys.
yeah, yeah, because it sounds like there's a lot of money involved and someone's getting paid off. And it
Yeah, and
sounds like
again, this should all be public record.
it should be,
Talk
yeah.
about having lack
Oh,
of
yeah,
faith in the justice system. This
it
should
should
all
be.
be
I
public
think it
record.
is. It depends on how you look for things. You can find out their campaign donations.
hmm.
Um, Other people have told me, this is how you just Google it a certain way and you can find out. And it should be like, I think it's public record in their courthouse. Don't quote me, but those things are of public nature that I'm hearing from other parents.
That's great news. That's great information. We'll dig into it. I just emailed somebody on our team to look into it.
Right, because that would, with him being there and eyeballing these judges, it's I don't know, should I say it? It's not who you know, it's who you BLOW. And that's how these characters are running these courthouses. All of them.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that applies quite literally for some of these people that, it's like, there's been a lot of exposure of late. And like in that podcast I mentioned before, Once Upon a Time in Nashville, and, they got one guy went down for it, he got a slap on the wrist and had to go spend a little time in jail, and he left town. But, that's not, they didn't pull the roots out. This is going on. It's rampant still, this corruption, all this sort of various forms of payola are happening rampantly in our state. And unfortunately, Williamson County is one of the most notorious sort of rattler nests, we'll call it,
Yeah.
that there is.
Oh, this
our biggest hurdles to try to get press behind this case is a lot of people locally, well, not a lot of people, everybody we've spoken to locally, and we've got some pretty good roots within the press here locally, and nobody will touch this story because of where it took place.
I think any press in any city, this is what I'm hearing from parents, no one will cover their case. The press doesn't want to get involved, or they're possibly getting paid off from, who knows, judges or attorneys or whoever. That's why the press.
Here's Jamey and his family. They have very limited resources. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars from people that don't have access to those kind of resources. This is their life savings. This is donations from family and friends coming in up against somebody who was a mayor, who's a real estate mogul, who has unlimited funds and resources and connections. It's not just that she was a divorce attorney. She comes from a powerful, wealthy family. And it's just a juggernaut that we're just doing what we can to figure out ways of helping. But it comes down to, you spend $100,000 to have somebody file an appeal for you. Well, that doesn't go through. Then you're back to square one. Not only you got to get a new attorney now, you have to find legal fees for a brand new trial. And unless it's a huge, case that's got a lot of press, which is hard to get, people aren't coming on pro bono. So it's just an impossible nightmare that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's just absolutely incredible that this can happen to somebody. And I'm brand new to this stuff too. I've never been in trouble before. I don't really know anyone who's been in trouble like this. And so it's just a nightmare that I didn't know existed until I was exposed to it through my friend,
Right. It all goes back to the personality disorders. They want to destroy that human being in any way, shape, or form they can. It's been done to me by several of them. It doesn't, there's no shortage of them.
But across the board, that's what every person we've spoken to that is, her ex-friends, ex-neighbors, they've all said that's her MO. It's scorched earth, absolute destruction. Ex-partners, the man she had an affair with said, "I've never met a more vindictive person than her. I'm not surprised at all that she would do this." And boy, would have been great to have them on the stand,
And or if they were on the stand, the judge could do whatever he wants anyway, which is another scary thought. These judges don't look at evidence. I had a federal court judge tell me that he didn't look at my evidence. So I had to file a motion the next day to make him look at the evidence. How bad is that?
It's terrible.
Wow.
But I'm glad we discussed this case If anyone has any questions, do you want them to come through me, or do you want me to put your emails in the podcast notes?
I think if you put the justice for Jamey D at gmail.com,
Okay.
that is an email address that our team checks regularly, and how we've been communicating with other sorts of organizations and team members.
Hmm.
And obviously, you can learn more about the case at www.justice for Jamey, and that's justice, the number 4, JAMEY.com.
And you're also on Facebook for the conviction of Jamey DiDomenico.
That is correct.
Hmm. Yeah, I think everyone should take a good look at this case and know that what happened to this man can happen to them, and give some support to Jamey DiDomenico. So I totally thank you all. I thank you, Steve DeVore, Travis Nicholson, and Terri Parker. Don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And we've got to get some justice for Jamey. Thank you for speaking out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you
having
very
us.
much. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.